going to introduce our next speaker. Technically, when we started this whole event, he was the first one to be come on board without any hesitation. When I just voiced out this whole unmute construct, he said immediately agreed. He said definitely I will be able to talk about it and give you a whole lot of construct behind this as well. Stefaan Van Hooydonk, everyone. So to give a quick background, I met Stefaan when we were setting up a garden at Perivale, London. And the humble soul that he is, he took up the most dirty work of clearing up the mud. And little did I know that he was the chief learning officer of Cognizant at that point in time, when I was like comfortably doing all the milder job, but he was like slogging his boots off in the mud. Stefaan has had a very versatile career. His career spans from setting up the business school in Shanghai to building the learning universities for prominent institutes like Nokia, Philips, Flipkart, and for that matter, Cognizant, where I met him, right? Stefaan is currently the founder and the head of Global Curiosity Institute. He will talk a lot more about it than I do. And he's currently writing, I think he's finished a book called The Workplace Curiosity Manifesto, which is available for pre-release. So if you'd like to place an order, of course, Stefaan will be able to share the details. I'm waiting to get the hands on the book. And over to you, Stefaan.
Super. Thank you so much, Dinesh. Actually, you're giving me quite a bit of pressure to start this session, but that's fine, I guess. Let me share what I have here in front of me. Can you see my screen, Dinesh?
Yes, I'm able to see your screen, Stefaan.
So the title that and thanks for having me to everybody, and good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you are. The title that Dinesh gave me after a little chat was Killed the Cat. Let's explore curiosity. And a lot of people have been talking to me about curiosity, linking to the phrase curiosity killed the cat. Now, I'm not entirely sure how to deal with that, because if you're looking at corporate world, if you're looking at people sticking out their necks, if you're looking at the startup scene, it's all about people that are curious, that are making the day, you know. So it is indeed true that society has this love-hate relationship with curiosity. You know that, for instance, in the Polish language, they say that curiosity is the first step to hell. So that's not a very promising note. In the 17th century, curiosity was a very feminine trait, like women looking at the mirror and looking at the more frivolous parts of curiosity, while the men were doing the more serious type of research. Of course, nowadays we all realize this is all bollocks, but still somehow in society we have this love-hate relationship, and sometimes we're associating curiosity with something positive, sometimes we're associating with something negative. Now, in the corporate world, especially as of late, there is an overwhelming positive connotation to the notion of curiosity and curious professionals. And I've done some research, as Dinesh said, over the last year or so. I've set up the Global Curiosity Institute, and I'm doing a lot of work with different companies, consulting them and doing research with them. And this is one of the standard questions that I'm asking. Kind of a curious profession is more likely to ... What do people come up with? And you could see here very clearly the overwhelming amount of people, the overwhelming number of people that are really talking about curiosity in a professional space being linked to sharing ideas, generating ideas, bringing ideas to life, and seeking out new experiences. More than having a unique talent, or more than having friends or speaking multiple languages type of thing. So that's an interesting first indication already that curiosity is really something that is becoming more than kill the cat, because a curious professional is actually an asset to an organization and not somebody to be killed, of course. Now, when I'm talking about curiosity, I have a number of dimensions. If you want to do your own diagnostic and find out about your own kind of curiosity profile, you go to my website and you can do this for free. Now, I identify curiosity in three different areas. First of all, are the curiosity which is traditionally looked at, kind of cognitive or intellectual curiosity, our view of the world. And when we're saying that Einstein was very curious, typically he was really intellectually curious. Now, another two dimensions would be our social curiosity, our curiosity about others. Very important in the workplace. How curious are we about the people that we're interfacing with at work, but also at home? If you're looking at divorce rates in a number of countries, people don't divorce because they are fighting with each other. The majority of people, they divorce because they're bored with each other. They've lost this opportunity, of they lost this muscle to really engage with each other in a curious fashion. And then the third dimension is really about how curious are we about ourselves, about our internal motives, around our values, around our purpose, type of thing, which I call which is self-reflective curiosity. So that's the individual part. Now, curiosity is both nature and nurture. Nature is what we as a professional or as a marketeer bring to the table. Nurture is how much the organization is allowing us from being curious. And what I found so far is that curiosity is really a force for good. It increases competitiveness, innovation, learning, engagement, but somehow it's fragile if it's not managed intentionally. And you will probably hear me speak more about the notion of intentionality. How much do we want this as an individual, and how much do we want this as an organization? Like curiosity is something like a muscle, something that can grow if we practice it, and something that atrophies when we don't. Now, we have a lot of marketeers in the room, so I wanted to go back to our school days in marketing. I'm sure that everybody has learned the notion of information gap theory, which, as we all know, is indeed a way to create a cognitive gap in people's minds, so they want to really read through or buy or do something to bridge that gap. Now, an interesting article I found here. Diana was still alive hours before she died. Whoa, that's a pretty normal statement, you would say. Of course, before she died, she would always be alive, but somehow this creates some cognitive dissonance, even if it's true, so people continue to read what is behind the text. And that's the information gap theory we're talking about. Creates a gap, and people are hungry to find out what it is. Actually, we also use it in marketing to drive people's buying behavior. You have a one big advertisement, really enticing people not to look at not kind of to look at the free, but actually opening up their wallet because they want to dig deeper. Now, while I was looking at all these advertisements, I also started looking in memory lane and looking at more of the vintage advertisement, and I found two really interesting ones. One from Coca-Cola and one from Camel. And really interesting, you look at the Coca-Cola one, for a better start in life, start cola earlier. It's really an ad about the power of giving Coca-Cola to infants already, because according to research, Coca-Cola says way back that the more Coca-Cola they have, the more they'll fit in as adolescents in their community, and the better they'll be kind of prepared for life. A bit of a weird advertisement nowadays when we look at it, but in any case, that's what I found. And then on the right-hand side, you find an article about really a doctor smoking cigarettes, and saying that this is really cool and looking happy and healthy and everything else. And then below you see this T shape on the woman's mouth and throat, which is all about the T for whether you're tasting it well and whether it's doing well for your throat, because all these weird dimensions. Now, interestingly, I don't know whether you've seen these advertisements before, and the challenge with the tool is I can't look at you. Now, when I dig a bit deeper, is that actually we don't have to believe everything the internet tells us. This Coca-Cola advertisement is actually fake news. It was created in 2002. It was created by R.G. White, and he never used it. It was never aired, but it was kind of a remake of a vintage ad. Now think about how much false, other fake and false news is going around on the internet, and how quickly we can influence consumers, whether it's through social media or otherwise, in believing things and actually becoming incurious in the process. So let's take a step back and look at curiosity as a thread. I think all of us would agree that throughout curiosity has been an engine of progress, an engine for individuals, for society, for our companies. And it always starts with a why or a what if. I'm sure that Paperflite also was created on the basic question, I can do something better, or what if we create a new tool for salespeople to behave better. But you're looking at fire, you're looking at microwave, even Play-Doh was created, or GPS, Mars rovers, even our own relationships are the mates we're finding, etc. So you probably agree with me that curiosity has been really important part in the major events in our own life and in society. You probably also agree with me that especially nowadays, there's quite a bit of soul searching among ourselves, but also the leaders that we're having in basically anywhere in the world. We're just coming out of COVID, etc. People are really thinking about what's next. Mark Zuckerberg has to start paying taxes suddenly. That was agreed by the G8. So somehow all these changes for us as companies and industries, wherever you are, things are changing so rapidly. So basically, new questions need to be formulated and new answers need to be answered or need to be found in order to face the future. When you're looking at a comparison of, for instance, Marriott and Airbnb, that in the more than 80 years of history, Marriott was able to kind of to build out 600,000 or almost 700,000 rooms. And Airbnb, it only took 4 years to amass roughly the same amount of rooms, you know, and their capitalization, actually Airbnb's capitalization is higher now. So the 21st century is really the century of ideas, while the 20th century was the century of production, of industrialization. And somehow you might already start seeing that industrialization relates to exploitation, doing things all over again, and the efficiency movement and everything, while the 21st century is much more about ideas, which require, of course, curiosity. Now, before you start saying that, of course, all of our companies are curious, actually, I'm going to tell you that many of our organizations are not really curious. And I'll talk to that about that in a second. So, for instance, when Satya Nadella came on board in February 2014 as a new CEO, he found a very incurious organization and legacy that Steve Ballmer had been leaving him with. And by kind of refocusing his culture, very much structured around growth mindset, culture, curiosity, and for me, curiosity is nothing more than growth mindset in action, where he changed a notion from, do we have a culture of know-it-alls, or do we have a culture of learn-it-all, where we have some humility that maybe I don't know everything, but maybe together we can learn it all. So that's a great way. And look at his share price. I also checked the share price beyond 2019. It has tripled since then for Microsoft. So he's definitely on something, onto something in creating a culture of openness. Now, when Harvard and some other business academics are starting to look at the notion of curiosity, in a very interesting article that was created by Francesca Gino in Harvard Business Review, with 3 insights. And it may be important to stand still with them. First of all, curiosity is much more important to the performance as an enterprise than we thought previously. I think that makes sense, especially in a notion of the century of ideas. Now, the second insight, it's not that hard to be intentional. By making small changes to the design of our organization or the way we manage people, we can actually rekindle curiosity of all of our people. And some of our people might have lost their curiosity along the way because of a number of reasons. Now, and then the third insight, I alluded to that already before, which is actually strange when you're in a leadership position. Although leaders say they treasure inquisitive minds, actually most of us, we stifle it, which is quite interesting to see. Now, I'd love to talk to you about this, maybe if we have some time later on. Now, this type of research I found the same in my own research. I mean, also sharing here now another piece of research that came out mainly of INSEAD and SurveyMonkey, where talking to the notion that everybody's looking at the world with different eyes and different filters. And for instance, 83% of executives say their organizations encourage curiosity, while if you're asking the non-executives, only 52% of them agree. And that kind of makes us thinking. And so I probably maybe ask yourself, how many questions do I ask on a day-to-day basis or on a weekly basis? And how many questions do we as a marketing team ask? How many questions do we as an organization ask? Even those questions where we're not really comfortable with. Are we also exploring the areas of the things that we don't know? Now you see here a picture of kids, and kids research has shown us that there's some research done in the UK, for instance, that young kids, they ask about 73 questions a day, say roughly, give and take. And by the time that people get in, or youngsters get into puberty, that number drops to roughly 1. And by the time we start working in our organizations, we're only asking procedural questions. What do I do to not get into trouble? And what do I do to please my boss? And beyond that, deeper questions we often don't ask. So that's a bit of a strange thing. And often you would find people in organizations or in meetings or in your teams not really speaking up or not being enough curious and acting upon that curiosity because I think maybe I'm not good enough. Or what would people think of me? Or maybe it's better for me to stay quiet and to duck rather than to kind of to be the suggester of improvement. And then on the other side, managers, they might be saying, well, shut up, we've always done it that way. Or nice, good idea, try it in the weekend and let us know what's happening because I'm paying you not to think, but to do, or time is money, you know? Now, if we're looking at specifically marketeers, and I worked about 7 years with Nokia. I joined them in China, and then I went to headquarters in Finland. And I was always surprised by the beauty a Nokia was. And for those of us who lived in the 1990s, I'm 52, I'm old, but if anybody else lived in the 1990s and the first mobile phones that we had, they were all black, remember? And then at a certain moment in time, some really smart outsiders from Finland, from Nokia, they suddenly asked us a very basic questions. What if we let people personalize their phones? And they actually overtook the market, and they had sometimes 40% market share, not because their technology was better, it was also better, but more because of the marketing people in the organization were so smart in saying, what if we create personalizable covers? And what if we make sure that people have their own ringtone while everybody else was going for black? Another example about black was asked by a company like Apple. Before Apple really became big in the with the MP3s, 99% of all vendors all went with black earbuds, and nobody was questioning whether they should have other colors than black, as if it was fine, and nobody asked themselves that question, and they all had kind of well-paid marketeers, and they all did their own job, but somehow they were limiting themselves until Steve Jobs and his team said, "Why do we just change the damn color?" And we all know what happened afterwards, you know. So that reminds me a little bit of what Kenneth Galbraith, kind of a famous economist, was talking about. Actually, it's far easier to be wrong with the majority than to be right on your own. And I think that's something also that is a challenge for curiosity, that sometimes being curious might make you a bit of a loner if you have those ideas yourself. But my point is that only curiosity and only curious people are going to drive the future. Now, let's look at the opposite of curiosity. The opposite is really conformity or compliance. And I'll probably be challenging you or be asking you, if you're looking at your own environment, your own organizations, on a scale, on the one hand, you would have curiosity, on the other hand, you would have conformity. Where would you lie? More on the conformity side or more on the innovation side? The ideal situation is roughly that you're roughly in the middle, that you're able to both explore curiosity, but at the same time that you're also able to make everything scalable in your organization. It's kind of the startup versus big company best balance. And here you see some pictures of a Galileo who was challenging the status quo, and the impressionist painters were challenging the status quo, and the story of Daedalus and Icarus. What is happening with, what if you challenge that for conformity? What if you challenge that compliance? Sometimes it's hard in the beginning, but it's very rewarding in the end after all. Now, some of the challenges that companies face embracing curiosity, which I have found so far, are probably you could bucket them in 4 areas. First of all, intentionality. How much do we want this? Do we think of curiosity as something that we leave it to serendipity? Or do we turn it into a project, and do we really want to do something around it? Often I found that the notion of innovation can also be similar in organizations. Innovation often is also hit and miss, especially in the bigger organizations, not in the small startups. They're all about intentionality. They're all about driving for results or driving for innovation. But that intentionality is really important. Definition clarity. I had quite a number of companies who came to me and said, "Oh, look at us. We have curiosity in our values, in our corporate values." But then asking a little bit deeper, a number of them said, "Actually, we don't have a clear definition of what we mean by curiosity, whether it's intellectual curiosity or asking questions, or for the organization to accept failure or something else." So I recommend always for organization to really be clear on what do you mean by this curiosity, and then have the enabling tools. How do you train people? How do you celebrate people? If you have curious people, do you promote them, or do you shy away from them and you try to push them out because conformity is much more wanted? And then also, how do you measure your KPIs? I mentioned it already. If you want to do your own diagnostic, it looks a little bit like what you're having here. You can do it. It's free, and you can find your own diagnostic. It's in 8 languages, and I've got about 3,000 people who've done it already so far. So we're getting quite some data points. And as Dinesh mentioned, I just pre-launched a book about the notion of workplace curiosity with many cases. some successful cases, but also some unsuccessful cases. Like for instance, Kodak Eastman was almost the opposite of a curious organization from the 1990s. Yeah, if you're interested, I'd love to kind of work with you because I think, especially in marketing and marketing related areas, curiosity is so important, and maybe we're not always driving things enough in that regard. So this was a really a short presentation that I wanted to share with you, and seeing kind of planting some seeds about the language of curiosity, the spread of curiosity, the multidisciplinary side of curiosity, and I hope this is just the beginning of a conversation.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Stefan. That was a very insightful session. A lot of takeaways, a lot of learnings. There are quite a few questions that come through, but for the lack of time, I think I'll pick my personal favorite to start with. Right? Curiosity is inherent in children, but in this day and age, it's too much of distractions, right? Even for that matter, the adults. So how do we channelize or declutter these distractions and be curious for the right reasons, Stefan?
Well, and you're asking for some strategies how you deal with it, no?
Yes.
Now, curiosity is not only, when you're asking the question, you're assuming that curiosity is intellectual curiosity. There's a couple of things. There's some differences between what I call productive and unproductive curiosity. And let's focus on the business world. Unproductive curiosity would be kind of being in a rabbit hole on internet, and you start with some question, and 3 hours later you forgot what your original question was, and that's not the right way of. That's unproductive curiosity. In a productive curiosity is a curiosity that starts with a question, and where you have discipline and focus to reach a solution. And that solution might be an alternative solution, it might be a different solution that you originally set out in the first place. Now, I told you that curiosity is intellectual, empathic, and self-reflective. What I'm often giving back to people is saying, why do you analyze first what your strengths are, and maybe build on those strengths, and maybe look at where some areas that you can improve on. A lot of people are not very good in self-reflective curiosity. We say that we know, we say that we're adults, but often it's just we're not very good at reading ourselves. We have two eyes towards the world, but we don't have eyes towards our beliefs, our barriers, or those type of things. No biases. So. Maybe one simple answer to your question would be intentionality. Be intentional, whether you're a company or an individual, and try to remind yourself all the time when you're brushing your teeth in the morning. Tell yourself, let me be curious in one of those three areas for the day, and in the evening brush your teeth again. And then reflect on the day, was I curious? Or if you're in a bookshop, buy the book next to the book you wanted to buy. Let serendipity work. Be curious, let things happen. And I often also talk about the difference between narrow and broad curiosity. Narrow curiosity is all about going deep into your specialization. There's nothing wrong with it. You have to do that to be a good professional. But also explore broad curiosity. Explore things that go beyond your area. Try to have some humility and saying, I can learn more. I can learn something new. Kind of being this constant novice, and not being afraid of being a constant novice. Wow. There's much more to say about it, but I hope I'm planting some seeds to help you.
Yeah, definitely, Stefan. That was a very elaborate and good response, Stefan. So we've got a few more questions. I don't think we have time to ask them. What I'll do is I'll send them your way, and I'll also mark the people who ask these questions so you can respond back to them if it's possible, Stefan.
Absolutely. And everybody, you can all contact me over LinkedIn and ask me personally these questions, and happy to respond them to help you on your curiosity journeys.
Fantastic. Thank you so much, Stefaan. It was a wonderful time. Thank you so much for accepting to be a part of Unmute, and glad to have you on board.
Thrilled to be here. Good luck to everybody.